Yang Mei was worried there might be a flaw in their defense system, but Zhang Yi trusted Karen and Shinsen's work, believing there were no security gaps. When asked why he hadn't attacked them, Zhang Yi simply replied that he wanted to test their abilities. The soldiers eventually realized that this shelter was built to protect Zhang Yi. The captain devised a plan to use explosives to breach the house. One soldier managed to infiltrate and plant the explosives while Zhang Yi watched calmly, then said, "It's time for them to learn how to face their enemy." The soldier fled the house before the explosives detonated. However, the explosion only created a small hole, melting the surrounding snow. Upon investigation, they found that the shelter's walls remained completely unscathed. They concluded that their only option was to dig a tunnel since the top of the shelter was indestructible. Ultimately, they gave up on capturing Zhang Yi alive, and an order was given to the snipers to eliminate the target. Zhang Yi, observing from the window, remained unfazed as bullets missed, and his reinforced windows remained intact. Disappointed with the abilities of the mutant soldiers from the West Mountain military base, Zhang Yi's reaction was noticed by the troops. Realizing the mission was impossible, the captain ordered a retreat. Seeing them withdraw, Zhang Yi began shooting at them. The soldiers fired back, thinking he had exposed himself, but this was all part of his strategy. Zhang Yi absorbed the incoming bullets into his alternate dimension and reflected them back at the soldiers, swiftly eliminating many of them. The captain ultimately called off the attack, commanding all troops to retreat, and referred to Zhang Yi as a mutant demon with powers too mysterious to comprehend. As they fled, one soldier was shot in the leg and could no longer run. His comrades hid behind a pile of snow and deployed a smoke grenade to block Zhang Yi's vision. However, Zhang Yi, who had previously absorbed snow from an avalanche, hurled it toward them, wiping out nearly the entire squad. A few hours later, the leader of the underground base received a report about the nearly annihilated squad. Previously underestimating Zhang Yi, the leader now realized the gravity of the situation. His secretary revealed that Zhang Yi's shelter had been built 10 years ago, making it incredibly well protected. The leader concluded that Zhang Yi, who was once just a warehouse supervisor, was now living in a base more resource-rich and luxurious than their own military outpost. He became convinced that all of Walmart's resources were in Zhang Yi's hands, granting him unlimited access to food. Zhang Yi's ability to store vast amounts of supplies made him a prime target. Determined to seize these resources, the leader decided to mobilize the full military force to take them by any means necessary. Some time later, the troops arrived at Chun village. Chun quickly contacted Zhang Yi, confirming his suspicion that the soldiers had come to attack the shelter across the frozen lake. Zhang Yi warned Chun to be cautious, as they would likely seize the village's food supplies to strengthen their forces. He advised Chun to escape to his residence if he ever felt threatened. Zhang Yi also warned that if the military discovered Chun's abilities, they would try to recruit him with promises of luxury, but that would turn them into enemies. Chun, feeling ashamed at the thought, reaffirmed his loyalty to Zhang Yi. In the village chief welcomed the troops and suggested Chun hide. However, Chun decided to meet the leader and insisted that hiding his identity was a mistake. The village chief introduced Chun as a mutant. The captain of the unit asked about his abilities, and Chun demonstrated his power to control snow. The captain then offered him a bright future within their organization. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi received a call from Chun, who reported on the strength of the troops. Zhang Yi thanked him for his loyalty and asked if he wanted to join the military. After hearing Chun's response, Zhang Yi was confident that Chun remained on his side and that the information he provided could be trusted. Chun, following his instincts, entrusted everything to Zhang Yi. Upon learning the enemy's plans, Zhang Yi held a meeting with the women in his home, informing them of the impending attack. He suggested they take shelter underground, the safest part of their base. Although the enemy was stronger, Zhang Yi was certain they wouldn't be able to breach their defenses. Zhang Yi then checked the security system with Shinsen, who confirmed that all enemy hacking attempts had been thwarted. Feeling grateful to have Shinsen by his side, Zhang Yi proceeded to visit Karen at her workplace to discuss potential attacks. Karen explained that explosives, particularly C4, were the most obvious method to destroy the base. However, without sufficient supplies, such an attack would be difficult to execute. Karen also reported that explosives and modified bulletproof vests resembling the uniforms of high-ranking enemy officers had been prepared as per Zhang Yi's request. Curious about the equipment Zhang Yi had ordered, Karen asked for clarification, but Zhang Yi assured her that everything would make sense in due time. At the village base, Chun met with the mutant soldiers who would assist in attacking Zhang Yi's fortress. Soon after, the main force arrived, including New Mutants and Professor Lien, who recognized Chun as the savior of Shinsen and the thief who had stolen his sword. Although Lien disagreed with the group's mission, he chose to remain silent. The soldiers inquired about Chun's abilities, and he revealed his power to control ice and construct ice houses. The captain then prepared for a large-scale assault on Zhang Yi's base. As they advanced, the captain noticed grenades scattered around Zhang Yi's residence. Zhang Yi, clad in combat gear, instructed the women to head underground. He then looked out the window, closely monitoring the approaching enemy forces. The soldiers crept toward the house, planting explosives as the captain ordered a massive detonation to remove any traps. They stacked bombs in an attempt to bring down the front wall of Zhang Yi's house. Observing from a distance, Zhang Yi had already anticipated their plan. As the explosives were about to be activated, the captain felt a tinge of disappointment. Zhang Yi hadn't resisted, making the assault seem too easy. However, when the detonator was triggered, the explosion resulted in minimal damage. The soldiers were confused, only a small section of the area where the bombs were placed showed any signs of destruction. Inside the house, Zhang Yi reassured the women that everything was fine. He had absorbed the explosive force into his storage dimension, rendering the enemy's attack useless. This realization stunned the soldiers. Chun then informed the troops to return to their base and prepare for the next attack. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi reminded Chun to stay vigilant. In the village, a soldier reported that they needed food supplies for 65 people. Chun realized that their food stocks would soon be depleted. The village leader approved the request but asked how long it would take to destroy Zhang Yi's base. The soldier responded that it was classified information. Later, the village leader asked Chun to build ice houses for the soldiers. The next day, new explosives arrived, along with a mutant resembling Shingeki Kaijin. The captain hurled explosives at Zhang Yi's fortress, but Zhang Yi countered by using his ability to redirect the blast. He threw the box of explosives back, forcing the soldiers to take cover. The massive explosion reduced dozens of soldiers to ashes, leaving Zhang Yi satisfied. The captain was shocked, questioning what kind of power could create such destruction. While lost in thought, a bullet nearly struck his head, but he managed to dodge it twice. Though Zhang Yi's shot had missed, another soldier was hit in the forehead. However, his mutant abilities prevented the bullet from penetrating his skull. Zhang Yi continued observing the enemy's movements. 2 more bullets were fired at him, but he absorbed them with his storage ability, remarking that this was too easy. He then reflected the bullets back at their shooters, instantly killing them both. A powerful tremor nearly caused Zhang Yi to fall from the window. The enraged captain launched an all-out assault on the structure, but the fortress walls remained unscathed. Frustrated, he delayed the battle and vowed to destroy Zhang Yi, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. Zhang Yi acknowledged the enemy's strength but saw them as a threat only if they managed to infiltrate the fortress. The soldiers who had failed their mission returned to the village, only to be met with complaints from the villagers. Frustrated, the captain ordered them to remain silent and demanded food to restore their strength. The villagers, however, began to question their support for the military. One soldier grew angry at the villagers' defiance, but the captain reassured him that they would remain useful until Zhang Yi was defeated, after which they would be used as energy sources at the Ear mountain base. Meanwhile, Yang Mi brought food to Zhang Yi. As Zhang Yi ate, he asked Ken about the structural repairs. Ken explained that they could be carried out later. They then raised their glasses in celebration of their victory. During dinner, Shinsen informed Zhang Yi that Professor Lien had contacted her. She handed him the phone, and Professor Lien expressed her intention to negotiate. Zhang Yi asked Shinsen if she trusted the professor, and Shinsen assured him that Lien always kept her promises. Professor Lien revealed that she had infiltrated the military base at Western Mountain and could assist Zhang Yi, on the condition that her student's safety was guaranteed. Zhang Yi agreed to contact her when necessary. After the conversation ended, Zhang Yi informed the women about the situation at the enemy base. Karen felt saddened upon hearing about the fate of her colleagues. Zhang Yi then asked Shinsen about the Trojan horse plan. Shinsen explained that Professor Lien could plant a flash drive inside the enemy's systems, granting them access to the base's network. Zhang Yi then contacted Professor Lien to request the mission, and she agreed, placing her trust in him after he had saved her students. Meanwhile, the captain reassured the villagers that the military was staying in their village to protect them from the demons across the lake. He urged them to unite in the fight against these so-called demons. During a meeting, the captain warned that a rebellion among the villagers was imminent and that some of them might die in the uprising. Professor Lien, furious at the idea of sacrificing innocent people, objected. Feng proposed an alternative to avoid unnecessary casualties, and Lien agreed, siding with them for the sake of her students' safety. However, she insisted that they minimize civilian deaths. Shortly after, Feng instructed the villagers to dig tunnels and join the fight against Zhang Yi. However, most of them refused, not wanting to create more problems. The village leader tried to convince them that Zhang Yi's death would bring peace, but many resisted, pointing out that Zhang Yi had never attacked them since the peace agreement. Lien grew increasingly worried about the situation. She contacted Zhang Yi to inform him of the villagers' actions and asked for his next move. Zhang Yi calmly responded that he would allow them to dig, as the situation was under control. Lien then asked for Zhang Yi's home address, hoping he would come to pick her up later, but Zhang Yi simply replied that everything would happen in due time. The next day, the attack on Zhang Yi's bunker began from multiple directions. Despite this, Zhang Yi watched without concern. Yang Mi, puzzled by his calm demeanor, questioned him. Shinsen explained that they had equipment capable of detecting underground movements, so allowing the enemy to dig was all part of their strategy. As time passed, many enemy soldiers began to perish due to the cold and exhaustion. Those who attempted to rebel were dealt with harshly, as the captain would not tolerate disobedience. A few days later, Lien contacted Zhang Yi again, reporting the rising death toll. Zhang Yi assured her that he would soon put his plan into action but first asked why the number of mutant attacks had decreased. Lien explained that only the leaders were fighting while the rest were guarding the village to prevent rebellion. Zhang Yi understood the situation and prepared for his next move. He exited through a secret tunnel, driving a snow vehicle toward Chun village while wearing a military uniform. A soldier who spotted him immediately saluted, but before he could react further, his life was swiftly taken. The scent of blood spread through the air, alerting the other soldiers, who quickly pursued him. However, their attacks were meaningless against Zhang Yi's dimensional abilities. He retaliated with his sword, cutting down soldiers one by one until the ground was littered with bodies. A distress signal was sent to the captain and the remaining mutants, prompting them to return to the village at full speed. By the time they arrived, they found the bodies of their fallen comrades scattered across the village. The captain, enraged, concluded that a traitor must have leaked their plans to Zhang Yi and vowed to uncover the culprit. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi took Chun back to his residence using the snow vehicle. Once inside, he brought Chun to his room, which was fully equipped with a body pillow. Afterward, Zhang Yi headed to the control room, where Lien and Shinsen were waiting. Shinsen explained how she had used Lien's information to access the enemy's base system and sever communications between the Zishan headquarters and Captain Feng. This news delighted Zhang Yi, who then assured Lien that he would rescue her students once the enemy threat was eliminated. However, their conversation was cut short when enemy troops arrived at the bunker's emergency exit. Zhang Yi had been waiting for the right moment to strike. He stepped out to face the enemy, who immediately recognized his presence. Standing alone, Zhang Yi appeared to be an easy target. One enraged soldier, ignoring his comrade's warnings, charged at him recklessly. However, as he approached, Zhang Yi pressed a hidden switch on the ground. A massive explosion erupted, triggering an avalanche that instantly buried the soldier beneath the snow. Lien rescued Chun along with the mutant cat. Feng was furious at her betrayal, but Lien declared that she was never truly one of them. A fierce battle erupted between Lien and the captain of the mutant forces. One of the mutant soldiers tried to defend himself by creating a barrier, but the mutant cat's powerful attack shattered it, instantly killing him. Feng briefly lost focus after witnessing his comrade's death but quickly regained his composure as Lien's attack drew near. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi's relentless assault mercilessly wiped out the remaining mutants. The enemy forces found themselves trapped, Zhang Yi in front and Chun lay appearing behind them. Chun used her abilities to trigger a massive avalanche, burying them all beneath the snow. Amid the chaos, Lien seized the opportunity to escape with the mutant cat, taking Chun Lei with her. The captain could do nothing but watch, powerless to stop them. The remaining enemy troops were now completely cornered as Zhang Yi stood above them. "You will taste your own weapons," Zhang Yi declared before launching explosives toward them. A massive explosion erupted, instantly killing most of the enemy soldiers. The captain and a few of his remaining troops managed to survive, only to face an even greater threat, a gigantic snow avalanche crashing down, burying them alive. Zhang Yi contacted Shinsen to confirm that his calculations were correct and assured her they would return home soon. Professor Lien suggested checking on the enemy captain, but Zhang Yi was certain he would freeze to death beneath the snow. After returning home, they celebrated their victory. Zhang Yi relaxed with his wives, enjoying a drink in the midst of the peaceful atmosphere. Turning to Yokier, Zhang Yi remarked, "You are one of the lucky few who have managed to survive in this dangerous world." Music. From the entire assault on Zhang Yi, only Captain Feng survived and returned to the base. There, he faced the wrath of his leader for losing nearly half of their elite troops. The loss of 50 top warriors significantly weakened their future defenses. Feng, burdened with guilt over the deaths of his comrades, whom he considered his brothers, fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness and willingly accepting execution as punishment. However, he also pleaded for one last chance to take revenge on Zhang Yi. The leader initially considered executing him but realized that losing their strongest mutant was too great a risk. Instead, he ordered Feng to be imprisoned for a week to reflect on his failures. The leader then made a critical decision, to halt direct attacks on Zhang Yi and focus on rebuilding their forces. He feared that other bases might take advantage of their weakened state and attack them. He then inquired about the status of the newly captured villagers. His secretary reported that they were in good condition and had the potential to develop special abilities. Without hesitation, the leader decided to begin experiments, injecting Feng's mutated cells into the villagers. Although many would likely die in the process, he was indifferent, prioritizing the replacement of lost soldiers. He aimed to conquer Tianhai City, but without a strong army, his plans would be impossible. For now, he postponed the missile project and instead considered negotiating with Zhang Yi to persuade him to join the Zishan base. Chen, the leader, ordered his subordinates to prepare the communication setup. Once the laptop and headphones were ready, Chen resolved to use the missiles as a last resort if Zhang Yi refused his offer. As the call began, Zhang Yi greeted Chen casually, even complimenting his leadership at the Zishan base. However, Zhang Yi's tone made Chen feel mocked, fueling his anger. Chen declared that his actions were not for Zhang Yi's benefit. Calmly, Zhang Yi teased him, pointing out his weaknesses, especially after more than 50 of his men failed to defeat him in just a few days. He then questioned how Chen planned to kill him after suffering such repeated failures. Chen, now furious, threatened to launch missiles to destroy Zhang Yi's entire hideout. Zhang Yi was initially surprised but quickly deduced that Chen was bluffing, as there were no missile bases in Tianhai. However, Chen insisted that he had contacts in a neighboring city that possessed a military base with missile capabilities. This base had previously been responsible for bombing missions against their enemies. Zhang Yi started to believe him but remained skeptical. To test Chen's threat, Zhang Yi dared him to fire a missile near his location. Chen scoffed, calling Zhang Yi a fool. "Missiles are too valuable to be wasted so easily," he retorted. From Chen's tone, Zhang Yi began to realize that the threat was real. Despite his doubts, Zhang Yi requested a few days to consider the offer. However, Chen gave him only one day to decide. After the call ended, Chen hoped Zhang Yi would surrender to avoid wasting valuable resources. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi began contemplating abandoning his current hideout. Shinsen doubted whether the leader of the Shinsan base truly had access to missiles, given that they had previously sent soldiers without missile support. Zhang Yi, however, confirmed that the military base in the neighboring city did possess such weapons. If attacked, everything would be destroyed. Yokier asked if they could return to their original home, and Zhang Yi nodded. "The safety of my harem is my top priority," he affirmed. Chun Lei looked disappointed, having just arrived in this warm and comfortable place. Professor Lien then reminded Zhang Yi of the promise he made to her. He could not forget it. Zhang Yi gazed at his computer, deep in thought, before handing a small chip to Lien. "The success of rescuing your students depends on your ability to install this chip in the central computer," he told her. Sometime later, Lien successfully infiltrated the Sinuan base without being detected. On her way inside, she overheard a conversation between two scientists. They were shocked to learn that Lien had left her students behind. Because of this, their leader, Chen, had decided to conduct mutant experiments on both the students and the captured villagers.